All right, so our next phylum of invertebrates is Echinoderms or Echinodermata. So let's go ahead and talk about those. Click. All right, so when we were talking about echinoderms, echinoderm basically just stands for spiny skin. So a few of our examples would be sea stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and a little bit of general information about these bad boys is that they have something referred to as pentamerous radial symmetry, meaning that they have 5 planes of symmetry as adults. So if you think back to when we did Intro to Animals, we talked about pentaradial symmetry or radial symmetry, so being divided out from that central axis. And that's what these echinoderms fall under. So on that invertebrates chart in your notebook, make sure that you identify that they have radial symmetry. All right, they do lack a head, so they do not have our 4 main body components, so anterior, posterior, dorsal, and ventral sides. We basically just refer to them having, once again, like cnidarians, a boral or oral surface based on where the mouth is located. So they do, once again, have that oral or a boral surface. And there are 7,000 identified species at the time of echinoderms, and all of those species are marine. So we do not have any type of freshwater starfish or sea slugs or anything like that. All right, going on a little bit more general information, they do have what is referred to as an endoskeleton, meaning that they have an internal skeleton, which is basically composed of these calcareous plates, so that calcium carbonate-based plates that are covered by this thin kind of spiny skin. Once again, basing it off of the word echinoderm, meaning spiny skin. They do have a water vascular system, which is a series of canals that basically runs throughout the entire organism. And these water vascular systems actually control the movement of these particular organisms called their tube feet. And I'll show you some videos in just a second, kind of looking at what those tube feet actually look like. And then in the echinoderm Edpuzzle video that you're going to watch, it's going to show what exactly happens as the bulbs contract and expand in order to release water through those canals, which then moves the tube feet and allows for locomotion and for feeding. All right, so we're going to go through a few different classes. The first class that we're going to look at is actually the most common and the one that is almost the easiest to remember because its name is exactly what that organism is. So class Asteroidea, think asteroid, think stars, is actually our starfish or our sea stars. So they do have a mouth located on the underside. So when you look at the top of a starfish, you are not seeing the oral surface, you're seeing the aboral surface. If you flip it over, that's where the mouth would be, and that is also where its tube feet are as well. And these tube feet protrude from all of these different channels in its arms called ambulacral grooves. So when you look at the upside down version of a starfish, you can see these little grooves on the inside of it, and that's where all those little tube feet will be. They do prey on a couple different types of organisms, barnacles, which are arthropods like I guess the cousin of the shrimp and the crustaceans and stuff like that, so crabs and lobsters. They also feed on bivalves, so things like clams, scallops, oysters, all that kind of good stuff. Basically any type of slow animal that they can catch up with. They do not move very fast. Any video that you've seen where they look like they're flying along the ocean floor or on the beach is usually sped up a good amount. All right, so looking at this particular image of a starfish or a sea star is truly the scientific term for it. We are seeing the aboral side when we are looking at the top of it. You will see the anus, which is actually right in the middle, and then you will see something referred to as a madreporite, which is the picture on the right in the red circle. So this madreporite is where the water will enter that sea star and will allow for those tube feet to expand and contract. When we're looking at the oral side of a starfish, notice that these ambulacral grooves go along all 5 arms of this particular starfish, or rays. The arms are also referred to as a ray, and that's where those tube feet will extend out from. So all within this little dark area are where the tube feet would actually come out. They have little sticky parts to the ends of them. All right, so if we were to dissect these, and we have not dissected sea stars in years in oceanography, skip my slides. Let me go back. All right, so the video cut out, and I do want to kind of start over here, but we have not dissected sea stars in years in oceanography. They're a little more expensive, and they are very hard to find a good specimen that would look as clear as this image here. So in this image, we can see that we've got the ambulacral ridge, we've got the ampullae, the ring canal, and then your stone canal as well. This is where your stomach and the gonads are located. And starfish, we know that they go through both asexual and sexual reproduction. The asexual version being regeneration. So if one of these arms or rays was to get cut off, they would actually be able to regenerate that. And for the most part, a starfish can actually regenerate almost its entire body if that ring canal is intact in the middle. All right, so the next class of echinoderms is class Holothuridia, which is a big old giant name for just your lovely sea cucumbers. And sea cucumbers, scientists have actually theorized that all of the sand in the ocean at one point has passed through a sea cucumber. So these are very worm-like organisms. They do not have spines. They do have some defense mechanisms though. So they go through a series, they have some sticky toxins that they can actually release from the body. And then they also do something referred to as evisceration. And evisceration is basically just them kind of vomiting their guts up out of their mouth or their anus. And this uses a scare tactic in order to kind of ward other predators away or to actually entangle and entrap organisms as well. All right, so I'm going to play this quick little clip for you to show you what exactly that looks like.
These animals may look like boring lumps, but sea cucumbers have all sorts of surprises. This hairy sea cucumber takes several hours to burrow into the sand, its body now safely hidden. It's time to eat. It unfurls its feathery tentacles. Any microscopic morsel it finds gets pulled down into its mouth. A miniature forest of cubes filter the water clean of organic debris. But at the first sign of trouble, the forest vanishes to feed another time. It knows no fear, possibly because it has no brain. Instead, a nerve ring around its mouth tells it when to move, when to fight, when to eat. In the animal kingdom, there's no emergency rooms, band-aids, or kisses for mommy. Fighting takes guts. For this cube, that's no metaphor. A fish nips at its backside, the wrong side. It expels its guts out of its very own ring of fire. Their filaments are sticky and toxic. If the fish gets caught, it might die. The fish wants no part of this fight, or this surprisingly resourceful lump.
All right, so just kind of shows you what exactly that evisceration looks like. So that expulsion of the guts out of either the front end or the back end. All right, so the last class that we're going to go through is class Echinoidea, which is kind of hard to remember when you think Echinodermata and then class Echinoidea. They kind of sound the same. But Echinoidea are our sea urchins and our sand dollars. So we've got a sea urchin here. And then this video down here as well is going to show a sea urchin actually eating. It is a very similar clip to the one that you were going to watch with the Ed puzzle. So I'm actually not going to link that, but you can kind of see the tube feet on the underside and then the mouth structure as well. And what's really cool is this mouth structure has kind of a funky name. So the mouth and jaws of a sea urchin are actually referred to as Aristotle's lantern. And Aristotle kind of named it the lantern-like mouth when he was out on the HMS Beagle and starting to kind of study some of these different sea creatures that he came across. And he wrote down that the jaw structure of a sea urchin looked very similar to a street lantern, and hence the name Aristotle's lantern. So the lanterns at the time looked very similar to, I guess, what the mouth and the jaws of an echinoderm look like. The mouth and jaws of a sea urchin. All right, so they do have an endoskeleton, and that is what's forming the round shape of both the sand dollar and sea urchin. And they do have movable spines, and these spines aid with locomotion, in addition to having 2 feet in between that aid as well. All right, so here is a little image of what I was talking about, Aristotle's lantern. So this is a cross section, both pictures are, of the jaw and mouth structure of a sea urchin. So if you were to flip a sea urchin over, this is the top part, what you would see when you were looking at it. If you were to flip it over, you would see the mouth structure. And then to dissect it fully, you would see the mouth structure on the inside, called Aristotle's lantern. All right, sea urchins do have spines that are actually removable from the body, and that is another defense mechanism that they hold. So if you come in contact with a sea urchin and you brush up against it or you step on top of it, you are going to have some nasty spines into the foot or the ankle or your arm or whatever you've touched on that urchin itself. And it is quite painful. All right, and then I don't go into too much detail about sand dollars. Sand dollars are another type of echinoidea. They have that same shape to them, so that pentamerous radial symmetry or pentaradial symmetry. So they've got that 5-point radial symmetry. A lot of them do kind of have a star or flower-looking shape on the arboreal side of that sand dollar. All right, some other members of the phylum Echinodermata are brittle stars, and feather lilies are actually shown in the video, The Shape of Life, which you're going to watch after you go through this note set. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about them. They're a little bit different looking. They kind of look like aliens from a different planet. All right, they are suspension feeders, which is kind of cool when you think about it being a starfish itself, because no other echinoderms are truly suspension feeders where they're bringing in water, filtering out the tiny particles, and then letting it go. So basically what they'll do, feather stars and sea lilies will extend their little feathery arms, their little feathery rays, and then those small particles, their small hairs will actually trap the small particles from the ocean, and they will bring it to the oral surface of the mouth. All right, a little bit about the biology of echinoderms.